the Senate a chance to step into the power vacuum and return Rome to its republican roots. But that was, of course, a pipe dream. The Praetorian Guard as a whole did not share their comrades' idealism. As it turned out, Caria and the other assassins were unable to get to Uncle Claudius before the rest of the guard hustled the stammering fool into the safety of their camp. According to legend, Claudius was hiding behind a curtain when they found him, but that is most likely a later dramatic flourish. That very night, the guard declared Claudius to be the new emperor, which, when word got out, seemed like some kind of sick joke. Everyone knew that Claudius was a mushy-headed dunce who had managed to stay alive through the reigns of Tiberius and Caligula because he made such a great butt for jokes. There was no way that he was capable of ruling the empire. And this was, of course, precisely the point. The Praetorian leadership figured Claudius would be easy to control. As we'll see next week, though, Claudius seems to have had everyone fooled pretty well. He was no fool at all, and would prove to be a thoroughly competent emperor, even if his domestic life left something to be desired. The short and brutal reign of Caligula is an object lesson for why you don't put absolute power in the hands of one man, especially without vetting him first. Though he was the first really terrible emperor, he will certainly not be the last, as every generation or so, another Caligula will emerge to remind everyone why they tried to get away from all of this in the first place, why they had shared consulships, why they had thrown the kings out, why they had set up the Senate, why they had set up the people's assemblies, why it was just dumb to give absolute power to just one guy. But it was too late to go back to the days of a shared consulship or the diffusion of power. All the Romans could do now was try to survive the bad years and hope that the next guy would be better. Because, like it or not, the emperors had all the power now. This week's episode is brought to you by Audible. As you are no doubt aware, Audible is the internet's leading provider of audio entertainment, with over 60,000 titles to choose from. When you're done with this episode, go to audiblepodcast.com/Rome. That again is audiblepodcast.com/Rome. By going to that address, you qualify for a free book download just for signing up for a 14-day trial membership. There is no obligation to continue the service, and you can cancel anytime and keep the free book download. You can also keep going with one of the monthly subscription options and get great deals on all future audiobook purchases. This week, I am going to recommend picking up The Roman Way by Edith Hamilton, which is a nice exploration of the cultural underpinnings of Roman society. Just remember to go to audiblepodcast.com/Rome so they know who sent you. Hello, and welcome to the History of Rome. Episode 61, What, Me Claudius? I feel like I could pitch the story of Claudius to studio executives and get them to invest in my slapstick period comedy about the bumbling, stuttering black sheep of the family who, when his crazy nephew is assassinated and no other viable candidates can be found, suddenly finds himself proclaimed emperor of the Roman Empire. Of course, our sympathetic hero is not really the idiot everyone thinks he is. He's just misunderstood. And as he navigates his way through the treacherous and often hilarious world of Roman power politics, from the heart of the capital to the far-off island of Britain, he emerges as a just, wise, but still physically clumsy ruler trying to do right in a world gone horribly and hilariously wrong. Starring Ricky Gervais as Claudius and Rowan Atkinson as the freedman's secretary Narcissus, trying in vain to hold everything together. Co-starring Britt and Jermaine from Flight of the Conchords as the brothers who lead the resistance to Claudius's invasion of Britain, and of course, Leslie Nielsen will get a cameo as the ghost of Caesar Augustus. This, my friends, is pure comedy gold. And the thing is, I wouldn't have to maybe add a few more pratfalls, but other than that, the true story of Claudius's improbable rise to power looks and feels enough like the premise of a comedy that we wouldn't have to touch the underlying story at all. It's a weird thing that Claudius became emperor. Weirder still, that he turned out to be a good one. Tiberius Claudius Drusus was born in 10 BC in Gaul, the youngest of the 3 surviving children of Drusus and Antonia. His older brother was the great Germanicus, and his older sister was the cunning Livilla. From the start, though, young Claudius was neither great nor cunning. In fact, for his entire childhood, there are 0 examples of anything resembling a positive adjective being attached to his name. Young Claudius, it seems, suffered from some sort of nervous tic that led to a pronounced stutter throughout his youth, which earned him nothing but scorn and exasperation from the extended imperial family. Theories abound about what his affliction actually was, ranging from cerebral palsy to polio to Tourette's, but nobody knows for sure what it was. What we do know is that his mother Antonia appears to have been horrified by him and showed nothing but disdain for her youngest son. When not referring to him as a monster, she used him as the benchmark for stupidity, as in, why, that man is as dumb as my son Claudius. Unable, I guess, to even stand the sight of him, Antonia dumped Claudius off on Livia, who herself had nothing but contempt for this stuttering embarrassment of a boy. Livia had no time to deal with him, so she hired a, quote, tutor to look after him. The tutor, who legend holds was a former mule driver, used severe discipline to try to break Claudius of his witless ways, which everyone assumed was simply caused by laziness and bad moral fiber. Claudius survived his childhood, and when he emerged into his teens, he showed some signs that he was not actually an idiot, just that he had difficulty communicating his ideas to other people verbally. He expressed an interest in studying history, and encouraged that there may be hope for the little monster after all. Augustus hired Livy to tutor his step-grandson in 7 AD. This opened up a brief window of time during which Claudius appears to have climbed out of the family doghouse. In a letter to Livia, Augustus even expressed amazement after hearing Claudius deliver a fine oration that the young man was even capable of such a thing. Apparently finding the formal rules of oratory to be some kind of mental crutch, Claudius turned out to be quite a capable public speaker. It was only in private conversation that his mouth kept hiccuping on him. This brief spell of acceptance was broken when Claudius decided to write a history of the civil wars. The finished draft was read by Livia, who deemed the work far too critical, accurate, a telling of Augustus's rise to power. The work was suppressed, and the family henceforth decided that Claudius could not be trusted with the family secrets and must never be allowed anywhere near power. After Augustus died, 23-year-old Claudius petitioned Tiberius to allow him to enter the cursus honorum, but Tiberius refused his nephew's request. Claudius was not to be allowed a public career. He would have to settle for a private life of scholarship. Throughout the 20s AD, Claudius tried to stay below the radar as Sejanus rose to power and targeted anyone he thought might be a threat. It is a testament to how insignificant a political figure Claudius was at this point that he survived the purges and counter-purges of Sejanus and Tiberius, even as they swallowed his brother, sister, and various nephews, nieces, and cousins. The small role Claudius did play in the drama of Tiberius's reign was as a husband of convenience for Sejanus, who married his adopted sister to the imperial family's black sheep in order to strengthen his own ties to the ruling clan. The marriage ended in a quick divorce after Sejanus fell from power, and Claudius couldn't afford any connections to the disgraced and executed former prefect of the guard. Over the course of Tiberius's reign, as politically insignificant as he was, Claudius did make a respectable name for himself as an author and a scholar. After getting burned early for writing about topics that hit too close to home, Claudius branched out and wrote a history of the Etruscans, and later produced an 8-volume series on the Carthaginians. So while he got no love from his family, the wider Roman world seems to have grown well disposed towards the one member of the imperial family who didn't seem to be lusting after power. When Augustus died, the upper-class equestrians actually chose Claudius to head their delegation during the funeral procession, and during Tiberius's reign, the Senate voted to allow Claudius the right to join in the body's debates, though this latter bill was vetoed by the emperor. After Tiberius' son Drusus died, Claudius was even championed as a possible new heir apparent, though Claudius hastily and smartly declared that he had no interest in the job. After Tiberius died and Caligula became emperor, Claudius suddenly found himself thrust into the public career he had long since given up on. Upon his ascension, Caligula decided to serve as consul and chose, of all people, Claudius to serve as his colleague. This was not out of any great love or respect for Uncle Claudius, though. Mostly, Caligula just wanted to remind people of Germanicus, and so elevated his dead father's brother to the consulship. Far from respect, Caligula actually seems to have gone out of his way to torture his uncle, turning Claudius into a sort of de facto court jester, kept around mostly to be the butt of the emperor's jokes. But it wasn't all just, haha, I put a whoopee cushion on Claudius's chair kind of jokes. Caligula also extorted huge sums of money from his uncle. At one point, inventing a new priesthood, and then forcing Claudius and a few other wealthy targets to pony up ridiculous fees to join. Non-compliance would have surely meant death, and by the time Caligula's short reign was over, this, and other events like it, caused Claudius to be deep in debt. Legend has it that when Caligula was assassinated, Claudius was found hiding behind a curtain in the imperial palace. Quite reasonably assuming that he was about to be killed, Claudius was shocked when the members of the guard who found him knelt and proclaimed him emperor. That's the legend anyway. Other, probably more reliable accounts have Claudius being hustled back to the Praetorian camp, unsure of his fate, only later being proclaimed emperor. I said last week that this happened on the night of the assassination, but alert listener Claude was kind enough to remind me that Gibbon says that at least 48 hours passed before Claudius was declared emperor. During the interval, the Senate argued with itself over who should be the next princeps candidate. The Praetorians seized the initiative and called it for Claudius, who they hoped to be able to control. It speaks volumes about how entrenched the new imperial system had become, that when the Senate found itself briefly without an emperor lording over them, they dissolved into arguments not about how best to reassert the Senate's authority, but rather who among them should rule. The bickering in the Senate was finally shut down when word came that the Praetorian Guard had in fact settled the matter and named Uncle Claudius princeps. Too factionalized to resist, the Senate found itself accepting the Guard's decision. Foolish, clumsy, embarrassing Claudius was now the absolute ruler of the Roman Empire. But the Senate still had some pull, and they extracted a promise that Claudius would not prosecute Caligula's assassins or anyone who may have been involved in the wider conspiracy, which a number of the senators were. Claudius agreed, but he refused to spare the lead assassin Caria, who was eventually tried and convicted for the murder of Caligula. Yes, it was a very good thing that Caligula was dead, but it would set a very bad precedent for there to be no punishment whatsoever for the high crime of assassinating an emperor. Not that anyone paid attention to the message Claudius was trying to send, as he spent most of his reign dodging murderous plots of every shape and size, and in the end was very likely done in by one hatched by his wife Agrippina. It appears that while everyone outwardly accepted Claudius, behind every back was a knife, or a bottle of poison, or the legion stationed in Dalmatia. On that last point, Claudius was wise to make one of his first moves after taking office be the payment of cash bribes to the army to ensure their loyalty, because in 42, a plot was cooked up between an ambitious senator in Rome and the governor of Dalmatia, who just so happened to be an ex-brother-in-law of Claudius. Their plan was relatively simple. The governor was going to march his legions on Rome and then depose Claudius. The only problem was that when it came time to actually launch the rebellion, the troops decided that they were better off staying put rather than joining in a dangerous scheme to take control of the empire. The planned coup fell apart, and the governor, publicly exposed, committed suicide. So, while Claudius did his best to maintain good relations with the Senate and anyone else who might conceivably want him dead, it got him nowhere. With his reputation as a bumbling fool, everyone seems to have thought that